Welcome back to Farnham Honda, and today I'm riding another one of the new bikes from Honda for 2025. This is the GB350S. Now this bike has been around for a few years in other regions, in Asia, etc. But Honda have never brought this bike to the UK or Europe. So for 2025 we're now getting this machine. Now this is a 20 horsepower, 30 newton meters of torque, so it's hardly a powerhouse, but this bike is only, well, it's just under £4,000. It's A2 compliant. It looks like a great fun little machine, so I thought while I'm here I'll take this out for a bit of a spin, let you know my thoughts on this bike, and yeah, how's it going to compare? I recently rode the BSA Gold Star, which is actually a £5,000 sort of retro inspired machine. This is only £4,000 or just under, so incredibly well priced. So if you're interested in the little GB350S, grab yourself a cup of tea, make yourself comfortable, and chopsy, roll the intro. So here she is, the GB350S. Now this one's got a couple of accessories on it. The cowl around the headlight is an accessory to get a bit of a calf racer sort of look. And obviously this luggage is an accessory as well, which all bolts onto the back here. So, you know, you've got all these options available with the bike. Oh, and it's also got some spotlights fitted on this one. So you've got little spotlights on the front there. And those are operated by this rather small button. So jumping on the bike, it feels, you know, obviously I'm a 6'2", 20 stone, I'm a big bugger, but I don't feel too massive on this. The clutch is incredibly light. The clutch feels like it's not even connected. It just feels like the lever's just waggling. It's incredibly light, the clutch on this machine. The riding position is nice, you know. You've got a good view in front of you of the bike. It's very upright, very comfortable. Obviously a bench seat which you can move back and forward on, so you can get your seating position exactly how you want it. And the foot pegs are directly below my hips really, so your conventional sit up and beg riding position. You know, there's no other real way to describe it. The engine sort of, I can feel it, but it's a single. It's a 348cc single. It is air-cooled, which I think is really quite unusual, isn't it? Normally they're water-cooled, you know, these machines. So it's air-cooled, but it's incredibly smooth. It's got a twin balancing shaft set up to reduce vibrations. And, you know, for a single, it's incredibly smooth, incredibly smooth. It's only 20 horsepower, so, you know, you're not going to set the world alight with it. But it's got 30 newton meters of torque, and the engine has been designed to be overly square, so that takes a bit of the sort of peak power away from the bike, but gives it a nice rich sort of torque curve, and that's why it's got, you know, 30 newton meters of torque. So more torque than power. Performance wise, I guess you could compare it with the likes of the Royal Enfield 350s, you know, the Hunter. All right mate, calm down. Brakes, yeah, it takes a bit of a firm tug on that front brake. It's only got a single disc set up front, and it takes a bit of a hoik to bring it to a stop there, I have to say. I'm not sure how many miles this bike's got. It won't have many, so it may still need bedding in a little bit, but yeah, not the most aggressive of front brakes. Obviously there's no quick shifters, no blippers, you know, none of that nonsense. It's all completely manual, but the bike does have traction control, so you do have some sort of basic traction control. Obviously no IMU, just completely based on wheel speed, but there is some traction control, and of course you've got ABS, but you'd probably have to be the Hulk to activate the ABS because you have to give a proper old tug on the brakes. Let's see if you can do sort of motorway speeds on it. Let's get it up to 70 miles an hour. So that's full throttle in third now. 60. It's only 5 speed. and I believe 5th is a bit like an overdrive gear. So I'm still full throttle here, 65. Bear in mind I am 20 stone, so 4 into 5th. So yeah, I can feel I'm actually losing a bit of speed now. Look, so you really do have to work the engine. It will do 70. If you're a bit lighter than me, you could probably sit at 70 no problem. When you go into 5th, there's no rev counter, but it doesn't feel like it's screaming. Like I say, I'm actually losing a bit of speed as I got into 5th, but you can do 70 miles an hour on it, and a lighter rider could maintain 70 miles an hour, I think, without any problem, as long as it's not uphill. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Would it help if I got off and pushed at this point? I think it might. Right, let's try that front brake again. Yeah, it's got the power there, but you've just got to give the lever a good old tug, but it does stop. It may be lacking a little bit of power, but the actual feel of the bike, it feels really nice actually. Compared to the BSA, it does feel sort of similar to the BSA. It perhaps feels like it's got a little bit more. How much road do you want? A little bit more in the corners perhaps than the BSA. And the handling actually feels quite nice. It's got a 19-inch front wheel and a 17 rear. And you know, I'm getting a bit of feedback from the tarmac. You know, it's no Honda Hornet, but I can tell you straight away, this is actually quite playful, really quite playful. I think definitely better handling than the BSA. Definitely better handling than the BSA. You've got a lot more confidence to chuck this in than I think the BSA. And as you can see, it's a little bit wet, a little bit grotty today, but it's fun. It's really good fun actually. So I'll sort of tell you that straight away. So if you want that, you know, you can have a bit of excitement if you open it up and sort of push it around some corners. It seems pretty firm, the suspension actually. It's not too wallowy. I was expecting the rear to be sort of bouncing, and it's not. It actually keeps its composure quite well. Now, Honda have obviously brought this bike into Europe because they realise they're missing out. You know, these sort of low capacity, simple, sort of retro inspired machines are big sellers. You know, and Royal Enfield sort of almost had the market to themselves, haven't they, for quite some time. So Honda wants a bit of that pie, and I actually think they want a bit of a winner with this. I mean, already I can tell you it doesn't feel like a £4,000 motorcycle. Yeah, it's lacking a bit of grunt. It's lacking a bit of grunt, but it doesn't feel like a £4,000 motorcycle. You know, it feels like a £5,500, £6,000 bike. It's a shame they didn't make it as a 450, because that'll just give it that little bit of extra power, a bit of extra torque. But I think my main problem is, you know, my lifestyle choice. The fact that I weigh 20 stone. I could have purchased my Hornet SP and this and had change from £14,000. I mean, that is just incredible, isn't it? You could have a 2-bike setup, 2 brand new machines for £14,000. You know, a hooligan 1000cc, 155 horsepower naked, plus a little retro plodder for your garage for under £14,000 on the road. That is incredible value. So let's have a little bit of a closer look at the GB350S. Starting at the front, we have, you know, LED lighting. That headlight looks quite mean, doesn't it? Full LED lighting on it. Your indicators stay on all the time as running lights. They look like they're flashing with the frame rate of the camera, but they're not. They're just on solid. At the front wheel, we have the Nissan front caliper and a single disc setup. So you've only got a single disc on this machine, because it only weighs 178 kilos fully fueled. So they've opted for a single front disc layout. There is conventional way up forks with the gators. I like that. That gives it a very sort of retro feel, doesn't it, with the gated forks. Here is that air-cooled engine, and I like the fact it's air-cooled because you've got no radiator at the front, so that definitely gives it, you know, it plays into that sort of retro look of the machine, doesn't it? And you've got the sort of machine down fins. So yeah, it's a good looking engine, that. And as I said, now this engine is not an old engine taken out of another bike. You know, this was a new engine for this machine when this bike was built, you know, a few years ago. It's looking a little bit grubby now though. You get a centre stand, a standard, which is quite amazing, isn't it? So a centre stand and obviously a side stand. I like the side pods with the silver and the sort of the embossed lettering. Again, very nice. Oh, we've got a little keyhole down here. Let's see what's underneath. Is that the seat release or is that the pod release? Ah, so you can remove the pod. And there we go. We've got a battery in there and some other little bits and bobs there, but no storage. There is the exhaust system. Quite a nice little sort of chrome cover. Sounds okay, a little bit quiet, you know, it's a Euro 5 plus, so, you know, they are a little bit quiet. I like all the chrome sort of detailing on the engine. The actual quality of, I can't see anything which looks suspect. You know, all the welds even look really good on this as well. The welds on the swinging arm there. So actually some of the weld and the welding and the finishing on the frame is actually better in places than the new Hornet, if I'm honest. But like I say, this bike is made in Japan. I don't think the Hornet is made in Japan. Not sure on that one. I like the badging on the tank as well. It's very sort of 70s, isn't it? I like the fuel filler. You've got a lockable fuel cap, and that actually feels really quite nice and tactile to touch. The bike comes with luggage mounting points, but this one's got the full bags on the back. This one's got the full luggage bags. Actually looks pretty reasonable size. You know, you could go on a bit of an overnight trip with that, no problem. You're not going to fit a crash helmet in there, but they're quite a nice little setup of those bags. Nice little rear LED tail light, and actually the whole rear, that's metal, that's not plastic, that's metal, and the whole rear fender and everything actually looks pretty decent, doesn't it? It certainly doesn't need a tail tidy. It all looks pretty neat and tidy at the back of the bike. Big fan of the seat with this like red stitching on the seat. It's not leather, it's like fake sort of leather feel. I don't know quite what it is. Velour maybe. Dash is sort of simple, sort of quite easy to read with your range and your neutral. So there we go, the GB350. Let's jump back on. Being air cooled, I'm not noticing any heat from the engine. I mean, it's only about 10 degrees today, so it's pretty cold, but I'm not feeling any heat from it. You know, if you're riding it in 30 degrees, I guess you may feel a little bit being air cooled, but it's running nice and cool in these conditions anyway. Metzler tyres, I think it's got reasonably decent rubber on it. Metzler Touratech, I think. As I say, 19-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear. They're sort of a bit like an adventure tyre though, so it's a good all year round sort of tyre choice. Jesus, it's nearly had me. What a bell end. Let's give it a little bit of a 0 to 60 test, shall we? Come on, get to 60. 60. So I think it's a little bit slower than the BSA. I'll compare that to I did the same thing on the BSA. Let's have a quick comparison. Come on, we've got to do it, haven't we? Let's give it a bit of welly. Yeah, we're shifting. So obviously I don't know the difference there, but I feel that it could be a little bit slower than what the BSA is. No comparison. I think the BSA does make a bit more power, so that would make sense. Or perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe it's not much in it. Despite the potentially budget suspension, you can chuck it around, and even over those big potholes, it's not slamming. It's managing those bumps. It's not blowing through the suspension, which you might imagine it would with a 20-stone fatty on. You'd imagine it would be blowing through the suspension. It's really not. It's pretty reasonable. I'm saying it gives you enough feedback and support to sort of push it on a little bit. It's a lot of fun, you know, working the engine, chucking it around the corners. If it was dry, it would be even better, wouldn't it? It does have traction control. I would be very surprised if you'd be able to activate it even in this terrible wet grotty conditions, and plenty of right wrist, and there's no sign of any traction control doing anything. But you know, this is an A2 bike, so it's a nice little safety net, isn't it, for sort of new riders to know you've got that bit of traction control. It's a tick in the box, isn't it? But it's a really good fun bike to ride. Like I say, you've got to work the engine if you want to get a bit more spirited on it, but the chassis can handle it, and that's what I love about it. It is a lot of fun. Okay, 30 miles an hour. Let's just try a little bit of an emergency stop. Not too bad. I went on a little bit gentle, could have stopped harder than that. So the brakes do work, but you've just got to give them a bit of a hoik is all. The engine also comes equipped with a slipper clutch as well, which is quite nice, having a bit of slipper action. So if you're going down through the box aggressively, you haven't got to worry about sort of locking the back up, keep everything smooth. So yeah, slipper clutch for a £4,000 motorcycle. You can't sniff at that either. It has a 15-litre fuel tank, and it does something crazy like 90 miles per gallon is what Honda say, you know, when it's ridden as fuel efficiently as possible. Obviously you'll never replicate that on the highway, but they say there's a theoretical, I think it's like 340 mile tank range, which is just crazy. I think MCN did a more of a real world sort of test, and they got about 220 miles out of the bike. 220 miles between fill-ups, that's like a proper adventure machine, isn't it? So, you know, that's nice that you could stay away from the fuel stations. But I would imagine, I guess 220 ridden normally is pretty bloody good, isn't it? The fueling sort of seems pretty good. You know, they do struggle, all manufacturers, with the latest Euro emissions, especially on singles. Trying to get the fueling right is quite tricky. They tend to be very lean, you know, at the bottom, and you can say it feels like it's very, very low, that idle, almost like it could stall if you don't give it that little bit of revs before you pull away. But yeah, it's pretty nice. There's no real snatchiness there or anything. The fueling's decent. You can certainly live with that without having to do anything. So overall, for just under £4,000, I think this bike is a bit of a bargain. I mean, Honda are on to an absolute winner, aren't they, with the pricing of their machines, you know, for this year and for the end of sort of last year. Since the sort of the Hornet 750 and all of that, and the Transalp, they've been bringing out some really well priced machinery. You know, quite incredible. And this definitely feels a bit better finished, a bit nicer to ride, a little bit more premium than I'd say how the BSA felt. It feels more modern. The BSA definitely felt like an older sort of generation of bike. So if you sort of like your sort of modern retros to be sort of copies of an old design, then perhaps the BSA, you know, or perhaps the Royal Enfields would be a better choice for you. But if you want something which is real hoot to ride, you know, real fun bike to throw around the twisties, and you know, it feels quality. It feels pretty, I'm gonna say the word premium, but you know, the quality feels above the price point, and you know, that's the point. The quality feels above the price point. The welds are, you know, because this bike's made in Japan, the welds are all really nice on the frame. Much better than the Hornet, much better than the 1000 Hornet, you know, surprisingly. And this bike is under £4,000. So the highlights for me, I think, is the suspension. I was really expecting it to be, you know, a bit squishy and not really being able to exploit the handling because the suspension was just woefully too soft and not enough support. Well, that's not the case. Niggles with the machine, the mirrors aren't quite wide enough for my great big shoulders. You have to give it a little bit of throttle as you pull away because it is quite flat at the very bottom, or feels like it's going to stall. Probably just due to Euro emissions where it's quite lean at the bottom end. The brakes are a little bit wooden, but absolutely acceptable, you know, absolutely acceptable. I mean, for a £4,000 motorcycle, there is very few niggles on this. Highlights are the suspension, really sort of nice feel, plenty of support, you know, not just all wallowy. You can chuck it through a set of twisties and you get reward from the tarmac. You know, it's rewarding to ride fast. You're not worrying that you're not going to get around the corner, you're going to end up in the hedge. You know, it does handle. It's got a nice feel to the ride, and the suspension is very good. I think a lot better than some of the rivals at this price point. It's a shame it's not a 450, which is another 10 horsepower. Another 10 horsepower would make it absolutely perfect. I do have to wring its neck all the time when you sort of get up over 50 miles an hour. You know, that's not helped because I'm a 20 stone fatty, of course. If you're more svelte than me, you probably won't have to wring its neck quite so much. But a 450 version would have been perfect. So overall, incredibly impressed for this machine for under £4,000. It's just pretty amazing, really. Massive thanks to the guys at Farnham Honda for letting me loose on their demonstrator. So if you want to ride this exact bike, give the guys a call. I'll put a link to their website in the description. So if you click on the link, that'll take you directly to their website where you can get in touch with them and book yourself a test ride. But massive thanks to those guys for letting me loose on this machine early, much appreciated. And massive thanks to you guys for watching this review, really appreciated. So all that's left for me to do is say thanks for watching, ride safe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.